Come explore our world of coffee. DeLuna Coffee features over 24 different blends. DeLuna's unique roasts can be delivered ground finely for drip coffee makers, coarse for the craft crowd, untouched as a whole bean, or even in convenient K-Cups. Founded in 2014 by the Lemmix family, Ed and Brett are FSU alums and boosters who are extending a special offer to all listeners. Use the promo code WARCHANT15 for a 15% discount. Visit DeLunaCoffee.com and check out their Facebook and Instagram.
From Tally to Cali,
It's time
to wake up.
wake up! WarChant.com is your ultimate Seminole sports source.
and this is Wake Up Warchant, fueled by DeLuna Coffee.
Coffee's for closers only.
Now here's WarChant.com's Aslan Hajavandi.
And Corey Clark.
Wake up! Welcome on into Wake Up Warchant. It is fueled by DeLuna Coffee. DeLunaCoffee.com. Come explore our world of coffee. Go to DeLunaCoffee.com. Check out the bundles, 2 for your enjoyment. Bundle number 1, Corey. It's got hot cocoa, a tumbler, and Blue Angels blend coffee, which is a full city roast. Bundle number 2, hot cocoa, hot chocolate. You call it hot chocolate or hot cocoa, Corey?
I go with hot chocolate. That's what I've always called it. That's how you grew up. Maybe that's a southern thing. Maybe up north they call it cocoa, but I was always brought up to believe it was called hot chocolate.
Same, bro. It's hot chocolate, a tumbler, and those Blue Angels espresso caramels. $40 for those things. Unbelievable. Ed, knock it off, man. Come on. I mean, don't, but, keep it rolling. Corey
You're
Clarkson,
too nice.
everybody.
It's too kind. And, yeah, folks, DeLuna, go there. Help them out. Help yourself out more than anything. They're Noles through and through. Go get their coffee. It's good. I've heard great things about it, unbelievable things about it. So go drink it. I was going to say, speaking of the Blue Angels, when we were talking about Veterans Day last week, apparently you and I are the only people left in the world or in the country that don't know that it's always November 11th.
Yeah,
because it was the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month that I guess they signed the armistice to end World War I.
Okay. Somebody put that in the comments, something about 11th month, 11th day, 11th hour, but I'm like, okay, but I don't know what happened on that day.
Yeah,
Armistice,
well,
World War
I
I, huh?
probably should have looked it up. I think it was World War I.
I'm reading a book about World War II history and how it affected the Middle East, namely my motherland of Iran. And, it makes some references to, like, what happened during World War I. And I have no earthly – only thing I know about World War I is they weren't the Axis. They were the Central Powers, and Franz Ferdinand got assassinated. That's it. No other basis of why they were fighting, what happened, the fallout, why there was a rematch, 20 years later or whatever it was. Let's get better, United States educational system. Let's learn more about these wars.
Yeah, I don't know what that's about. Maybe it's just because we were only in it for like a year as opposed to World War II, and we didn't get attacked like we did in World War II. So, it also wasn't like straight up evil like World War II was. You know what I mean? So that's more of the the sexier war. Yeah. It was just like, it was more black and white, like that person's evil. He needs to be not there anymore. And they attacked us. We need to go stop that. So, yeah, I didn't know it at all. Stephanie made a point. She's like, what are you talking about? It's the 11th day of the 11th month. Shanna texted me the next morning saying, are you guys idiots? Maybe more so me. And then Brady, that day in school when I picked him up, he's like, yeah, we learned about Veterans Day. And I'm like, well, what'd you learn? And he goes, I can't remember what it's called. Like, it's like a treaty, but it's like an armistice. And he goes, yeah. And I go, do you know when it is? Yeah. He goes, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. I'm like, I don't know how that went over me. Like, I missed it completely.
Hey, man, I couldn't skip school. My parents wouldn't let me miss any days.
Right.
I went to good schools. I got a diploma from this university there.
Well, what's weird about you is I assume you got it off back in the day. Like, Georgia, they still don't get Veterans Day off.
Yeah, we have Veterans Day off, and I'm like, I thought it was
That's weird. You would have thought you'd remember that date.
I thought it was something like an 80s, 90s sort of holiday that's kind of got tacked onto the calendar. I didn't know. So, yeah, I mean, there hadn't been a long-established sort of thing in my mind. But nonetheless, though, the sacrifice made by folks and their service, their ongoing service, is always wholly appreciated. So thank you. Shout out RG3 giving you shout-outs, too, twice on the telecast. Because this
Man, so I went and watched.
By the way, somebody pointed out, sorry, Corey, they also were on the call for Clemson and Wake Forest.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Oh, okay, so they're 2-2. Yeah. I went and listened to the I didn't listen. I watched like the condensed game on the ACC network, which, by the way, they just missed the first touchdown. They don't even have the first Florida State touchdown. They start with the game already 7. Hey, what are you going to do? I'm surprised they didn't have like the end of the Mississippi State-Auburn game on there instead. But I'm watching the condensed game, and I don't ever really get to hear RG3.
Yeah.
And I feel like if he just stuck to like the analyzing the play and what went right and what went wrong and what's trying to be done, I think you could live with it. Like I think he has some potential. But man, he says some goofy things. Like he called Ja'Kai Juki, which isn't great. It's a cool nickname though. I hope it sticks. But I can't. Nothing's even coming to my mind. But he would just say outlandish things as they're going to break. And baby, that's the truth. We'll be back right after that. Like stuff like that. And I'm like, that. Come on, RG3. You quit trying so hard to like have these little. I don't know if they're catchphrases or just be. Don't be so goofy. Don't try to force it. Just talk about football and don't try to be funny, and I think he has a chance to be really good.
All right, there we go. Broadcast.
There you go. There's
coaching.
a little analysis.
Clark Consulting Group, the Clark Group LLC. Clark Group, shout out. Live transcribing all the interviews that went down Monday over at the Moore Center with Mike Norvell, Adam Fuller, Kenny Dillingham, John Papuchis, but not in that order. What stood out to you, Corey? I pulled out Kenny's emotional sort of response to what it felt like to win that game. And, pat you on your back because Corey's like, he doesn't have to look at the keyboard when he's typing, but he's typing so fast and so furiously that he's usually kind of keeping his head down and just boom, 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 boom. And I wasn't even paying all that much attention when he got asked, what did it feel like to see the team celebrate the way they did after the Miami victory. And it's something he usually does after wins. Like he'll either take a photo on social media or he's retweeted stuff just about this is what it's all about, like seeing the smiles on these kids' faces. And he was asking what it feel like, and he just he had like a 5-second answer, just yep, man, it was awesome, it was super cool. And then he got asked, like, so what do you think about Boston College? And then I look up and he's looking down at the podium, and this is just how macabre I am or whatever. Like, I'm like, did he just get a text message from his wife saying that like their child just got hurt or something? Or I mean,
yikes!
I had no idea what was going on. I did not see. I did not really pay attention to the answer. I did not see the way he answered the question, and I guess like he visibly, he looked away because he was getting emotional about it. So I was looking around. Nobody else thought it was weird. I'm like, he's now has like this 5-second silence that felt like a whole minute of him not saying anything. And he's like, okay, about Boston College. And then you come up and ask him and be like, hey, man, Kenny, sit on the sofa. That's a cool moment. Everyone seems to be pretty excited about it. A lot of people enjoyed that. Yeah,
it is. I think it resonates. I think it probably resonates. You would hope it resonates with his players that, a part of it, I think, is he's young. He's talking about these kids. I'm sure maybe it reminded him of his college days back in like 2015. You know what I mean? Like he's so close to their age, but he is their coach. And you could tell it affects him. Like it really impacts him when his players are talked negatively about, when they don't perform well. A couple times they might have been booed this year. That hits him. And so for him to be able to see them enjoy a moment like that and be celebrated like that, knowing all the work they put in. And I think, look, man, if he was going to be honest and we're talking like just, again, that beer, that elusive beer that we can't get with these guys where it's off the record, he knows that they're trying their best. These kids are giving them everything they're asking for. They're not good enough to be great, but they're giving them everything they're asking for. And so it must have been really rewarding to see those guys get to go hop up in the student section, get celebrated like that, enjoy a moment like that. Must have been really cool for him. It clearly was, and it clearly meant a lot to him because 2 days later when he's thinking about it, he's getting choked up. But he didn't elaborate. He just kind of said, yeah, it was a really special moment. So I wasn't trying to like poke the bear like, man, this will be great for Warchant TV if I can get him just crying, like he just won an Oscar or something. And so I asked him, basically like, we saw you kind of get emotional there. What was that? Can you kind of explain what that was about? And he just go there, almost angrily at me. But he was also emotional too. Like, they're special kids, man. They're great kids. They're great kids, I think is what he said, what the quote was.
We got special kids, man. We got special kids.
Yeah, that's what it is. We've got special kids. That's what it is. We've got special kids. And I think he believes that. Apparently they do. I mean, I don't think he's BSing us. But that was pretty impactful to me to see how much it meant to him. You know, I don't know why. I think that's the kind of stuff. He's certainly not doing it for us or doing it for the fans or his players. It's genuine. But it resonated. And I would think, again, because I'm who I am and I'm just callous and calculating, I'd be like, man, I'm sending this to my recruits. You know, look how much this guy cares. He's on the verge of breaking down in tears about a game, about a win over, to get to 4-6 because he loves this team so much and these guys so much. Don't you want to go play for a guy like that? That's what I'm doing. If I'm in that role, if I'm a director of player personnel, I'm sending out that clip saying this guy cares about you. Don't you want to be coached by someone like this? Not some guy that's like, hey, we're on to Boston College. We're on to Boston. That's all we're thinking about is Boston College. That one's over. I don't know. I think that could maybe you could maybe use that in recruiting, but more than that, I think it tells you how special these coaches really do think these guys are, and how hard they play for them, and how much effort they truly give, and it means a lot to Dillingham clearly.
No, yeah, I'm glad you asked him because again, like I wasn't looking up at the right time to see. I just thought he was like, hey, let's just keep it moving. Like, yeah, it was cool. BC, yeah. So Boston College, but like there was this. I mean, it just seemed like the most weird, awkward sort of silence, but it was just him composing his thoughts. Because again, to your point, he was just so moved by watching these guys finally being able to have that moment in the sun. So they got 2 more weeks, though. They got 2 more games. They'll both be speaking of the sun, noon. Yes. That made my entire week. I'll be happy the rest of this week. I promise everybody. The only other thing I thought that
for which noon game?
Both, man. Gators games noon.
I'm not fired up about the Florida one, only because that means we got to spend the night somewhere around there Friday night, because you can't leave Tallahassee for a noon game. What are you going to leave at 6 a.m? So I mean, you might. I'm sure Ira will, but old Daddy's going to be somewhere on 75, closer to Gainesville, so I don't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get over there.
Why don't you just stay? I mean, it's Thanksgiving weekend. Why don't you just stay home? We got it covered. I'm going to go home.
Hey,
I'm just going to stop on the way back up. I mean,
hey, I'm all about that life. Tell Ira, let him know.
Yeah, I'll be at my
I'll watch
mom's
from my house.
2 hours away, so yeah, I'll just wake up at 8ish, 9ish, and then just trot my way up there. Let's get this thing over with. I love football season, but I don't need to be leaving Gainesville at 1:30 in the morning to, I don't know, unless I want to get back to see what bowl bid we're going to.
Hey, man, that's something. It's on the table. It's not – what are they going to be? So they're, a 3-point underdog to Boston College?
Correct, yeah.
And they'll probably be, I don't know, 3-6, depending on what Florida looks like against Missouri.
Dude, Florida's a 10-point favorite
on the road.
Missouri.
That's how bad Missouri is. I also think they're without a quarterback.
Okay.
Like they're having to play some freshmen. At least they did against Georgia. I don't know if the guy's back or not. But
I mean, they just beat South
their
Carolina.
Defense is so bad.
I mean, they just beat South Carolina by 3.
When? This past weekend?
Yeah.
Okay, Missouri. Okay, Eli Drinkowitz.
There you go. Look at you. Yeah. So that's why I'm like, there's no way. Yeah, they beat them 31-28. Then they got waxed by Georgia.
Well,
but their last 4 games, they lost by 21 to A&M. They beat Vandy, which everybody does, lost to Georgia 43-6, and then beat South Carolina 31-28. And you're a 10-point dog at home to a team that just surrendered 50 points to Samford? But hey, whatever, it's not. That's not my job.
Right. So, but anyway, so I think they'll be playing at the Swamp. They'll be probably 3 to 6 point underdogs in that one too. Again, those are not 33, 3.
Yeah.
So it's obviously not out of the realm of possibility they do get to a bowl this year. I mean, there's a chance they could go as a 5-7 team, but there's also not a terrible chance that they just win out. I'm not predicting it. I'm not saying it's going to happen. But again, if you look at these last 6 games, can you say that you would be shocked if they won these next 2? With the way they've been playing with Jordan Travis at quarterback and the way the defense plays now. Yeah, not the 13 Seminoles, but not 2020 either. You wouldn't be stunned if they won these games.
Well, again, a lot of that has to deal with the fact that Florida just looks so atrocious. Like,
whatever. That matters,
it
though,
counts
right?
all the same. Yeah. I don't know how much. Again, I don't think things were probably nearly as bad as I thought they were in my head, and I don't necessarily think things are now all that cured and everything is all that great now. It's the whole Jimbo thing. Like it's never as bad as you think it is. It's never as good as you think it is. It's always somewhere in the middle. I mean, Florida State could have blown out Miami, got it pick six instead of that tip, nonsense going on in the back of the end zone. Andrew Parchment scores that touchdown on that 4th and 12. What was it? Was it 4th and 12, 4th and 16, 4th and 14? I don't remember what it was. I'm supposed to remember for the rest of my life.
It's 4th and 14. Yeah, you need to remember that for the rest of your life.
I mean, I know D-Rob. That was 4th and 14 too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay. Two of the all-time great 4th and 14 plays.
But yeah, I mean, he scores a touchdown there. I don't know, man. I think Miami probably goes down and scores. So, but they didn't. Florida State won the game. Not apologizing for anything. But it just shows to show you just how crazy everything kind of spins on its head around in this college football season. But I don't know. I'm really excited for this Boston College game. All season long, I've pretty much been like, hey, let's not count this one, even though they looked pretty bad. In the beginning of the season, I had this squarely going to Boston College. I didn't think it was a coin flip. I'm like, I think Boston College will win the game. I just like the way that Fuller and Papuch just talked about what Boston College is and what they need to be to beat them, and like how much they're embracing the fact that it's going to be a violent, physical football game, as Papuch has said, and they sort of welcome and relish that challenge. So I'm like, all right, well, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear. That's going to be tough. But yeah, no, I would not be shocked at all if they end this season on a 3-game winning streak, 2 of them being against their bitter rivals. Shout out Mike Norvell talking about there's 2 games that you focus on at the beginning of the year. He didn't specify which 2, but we all know which 2, right, Corey?
We do, yeah. Miami and Jacksonville State.
Bam.
Those are what he's talking about at the beginning of the year. He didn't mention either one by name, but he said in the preseason, probably in the offseason too, there's 2 games that he is constantly bringing up to the players. Constantly. Like, put yourself in a position so you can win these games. And, yeah, I have to imagine it's Miami and Florida.
Athlon's got Florida State just missing after their Week 11 projections. So,
just missing what?
Making a bowl game. I mean, they didn't make their latest projections, but I mean that's the fact that they're like on that, that first 4 out bubble. Obviously,
it's a real bummer that the BC kid came back because I think they're undefeated with him at quarterback. But without him, I mean they got
absolutely
they lost to Syracuse 21-6. Yeah. They lost to Louisville 28-14. I think they got down 28-0 that game. They lost to NC State 33-7. I mean, they were terrible without him. And then he obviously – now, I don't know how much we take from the Georgia Tech game, just how bad that defense is, but they put up 41, and he threw for over 300 yards and averaged like 20 yards of completion. So it's a much different offense with him there. But, yeah, I think they would have beaten that team by multiple touchdowns if they were playing that other quarterback. Yeah. That's kind of how and I wouldn't have said that about anybody. How could you 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago? They couldn't beat anybody by multiple touchdowns. And now that's how confident I am in what I've seen these last 6 games is that, I mean, it's just a bad break, man. Like this conference, this schedule is just loaded with quarterbacks. Like it's tough, man. It's I know the kid at Notre Dame, he had his best game ever. That was great. But then, Sam Howell's good. The Louisville kid's pretty good.
Yeah, Louisville's good.
Sam Howell. Yeah, I said Sam Howell. Devin Leary. I always want to call him Dennis Leary. The 90s comic. Did those Nike ads. He did the one for Dion. Devin Leary, the kid this past week, this kid this week, I mean, it's never ending. And that's not even taking into account the best guy in the conference, which is at Pitt. So it's never easy, but I think it would have been probably pretty easy if this guy wasn't playing. But he is. Yes. So why am I even dealing with hypotheticals?
Yeah, no, I would have for sure moved this into like Florida State is certainly going to win if it was still Dennis Grosel playing quarterback. But it's not. It's Phil Dracovic, and he looked really good against
Man, that is
Georgia
a perfect
Tech.
Boston College name, too, isn't it?
Well, he's actually a Notre Dame kid. He transferred out of Notre Dame to go to
Well, no, because of his name. He's like, when he hit the portal, it's like it just funneled him right to Boston College. Where else are you going to go? You could go be a linebacker at Penn State, or you can go play quarterback at Boston College with a name like Jerkovich.
But the other thing I like from press conferences, I like how Kenny's very, I don't even know, but anyhow, I liked Kenny sort of taking a little bit of mea culpa on the 3rd and 1. I'm trying to find it in the stat broadcast play-by-play, but it was when they had 3rd and 1. I want to say it was the 4th quarter, but I can't find it. But they got sacked.
It was earlier than that. It might have been the 2nd quarter actually. Oh. It was when they were going on that side of the field, but I think it was the 2nd quarter when they might have had a 17-0 lead, maybe, or 17-7. I don't remember. Maybe it was even the 1st quarter. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But it was a terrible outcome anyway, because it was 3rd and 1 at like the Miami 40. So even if you don't get it somehow on your first carry on 3rd and 1, you got two plays to get a yard to keep the drive alive. And he even said it was a bad call. It was a bad call. They made a blitz. It wasn't anybody else's fault. It wasn't a sight adjustment that could have been made. That call, that was all my fault. And it was a 10-yard sack, and then you have to punt on 3rd and 1, which isn't what you do. This isn't, and it wasn't like a quick pass you would think on 3rd and 1. It's like he was dropping back looking. Just odd. But, yeah, he had a mea culpa on that. And he also explained in more detail.
It was the 1st quarter, so that's probably he was so eager to fall on the sword. They won the game, and it was also the 1st quarter. So
yeah.
Whatever.
He explained the Parchment play, saying that Parchment thought he was just running the cornerback off the line of scrimmage. Like his whole job in that play was to just run the corner down the field. For whatever clearing that side of the field out for something. They had made an adjustment. I guess they had made a check. Jordan thought that Parchment acknowledged that he wanted to run the fade. Parchment clearly didn't, and he was just running to try to keep the cornerback out of the flat. So he was running him down the field, looked up, and the ball was coming. I still think he pointed at the dude because he made him fall down. Why else would he have pointed?
I don't even remember him pointing, but I like how you're still interested.
But it's fine, especially if you know it doesn't count. If you're thinking, okay, the play's behind me, but I just made a move on you and you fell down, I'm going to mock you for it. I really don't have much of a problem with that if you're really running the right play. But if you're mocking someone and pointing at them, looking at them instead of looking up, that's an 80-yard touchdown. If he's looking up. But again, he didn't think the ball was coming to him. It was a miscommunication. It really was genuinely a miscommunication.
Moving on to the defense and Adam Fuller, I guess maybe even Papuchas to a certain degree. He does coach the defensive ends after all. I did want to ask him about Omarion Cooper. I think Chris did. That's something that is really interesting, and maybe I should even ask a follow-up on it, but the fact that I wonder where he was in their plans going into the preseason camp. I don't remember seeing a lot of 37. We talked way more about 38, Shaheem Brown, than we ever spoke about 37. And I wonder what have you ever, because the whole thing about Jermaine was, have you ever seen anybody play a game as good as Jermaine Johnson did? But I almost want to be, have you ever been around somebody that sort of come out of nowhere and then end up being maybe one of the shining stars on your team? He was the highest graded defensive player against Miami. And again, as this team starts to look ahead maybe to next season's roster, I think, Ira tried to ask a kind of a question about that in terms of the youth they have on defense. They're trying to pass you offensive line. They already have a not JUCO transfer, but rather an FCS guy from the portal that they've earned a commitment from. They're going to try to patch everything as much as they can, I would think, through the portal. But, they're going to have to – some of these homegrown products are going to really have to step up. And it's been cool that he's been able to do it at somewhere that's totally a huge position in need.
Yeah. Well, in Noles, too. I think Norvell said that they loved what they saw from him. I don't think Omarion was here in the spring, but he might have been. I don't think so. But I think what he said was they loved what he was doing in the offseason, in the summer conditioning stuff, and looked great, was off the charts, and they really thought they had plans for him, and he got hurt. And so he missed like the first 2 weeks of camp. And by that time, you feel like you're behind. You got to play catch up. So he wasn't really in the – and plus you did have a bunch of corners that you thought you had anyway. Dotson's done basically nothing.
Yeah.
And he's a guy you counted on now for 2 years in a row. And so maybe he's down on the depth chart more than he would be, more than he probably should have been, looking back now in hindsight. But yeah, and then he slowly just, like they said in practice, he just kept making plays and kept making plays. Like, well, let's put him out there. And now he's making plays in games. And I had forgotten until I was watching the replay on Sunday night that he almost intercepts that pass there at the end. Like, that's a great play on that throw to Mallory where he comes off his guy. And I was worried they were going to call targeting. But it wasn't targeting. He was just trying to go make a catch. But their helmets did hit. And he got kind of knocked a little loopy, it looked like, or at least he was down for a count, and Mallory was too. But that's a play. That's like a guy that knows the sport.
Yeah.
And because you're not just, okay, this is my guy, this is what I'm doing. You also look up and you make an adjustment on who the ball is going to, and you come off your guy to make a play. That's what all the great ones have always done. T-Bug didn't intercept 12 passes in 1 year just on passes to his guy. Greg Reed was doing that his first game against Miami in 2009. He came off his guy to go make a pick because he saw where the ball was going. Now, it can get you in trouble too in certain times, but in that moment when there's only 15 seconds left, for him to have the wherewithal to look and see that's where the ball is, let me go make this play instead of letting him catch it. Man, I've been really impressed with him. Other than just out of nowhere, like Noles we saw in the spring, right? Like we thought he was going to be pretty good, and he is. Cooper, I didn't know, man. I mean, if he would ever make an impact here, and like him and Deloach have been really pleasant surprises on that side of the ball. Maybe you could throw in, I don't know, Malcolm Ray seems to be coming along.
Yeah,
a little bit. He certainly he made some flash plays on Saturday, I thought. But those two in particular, guys that you weren't maybe counting on. That's been that moving forward as you move forward with this program. Those two guys have been real nice surprises and could be building blocks.
Don't look now, everybody, but Florida State currently, Corey, total defense, they are 67th in the country. So Adam Fuller has hit the mark of what we laid down for him going into the season. The fact that was one of the things that we did talk about in the preseason, Corey, was what if this defense can just get to middle of the pack? With there being 130 teams in the FBS, I mean, they are, they're hovering right around there at 67. The fact that they are there, but the record is what it is. I mean, obviously the Miami game really is just a huge lift to everything. Is it a bit of a bummer to see the fact that they are kind of moving up defensively, but they're still maybe on the outside looking into making it into a bowl game? And legitimate possibility of it happening, but if you would have known that this was going to happen, and maybe I should just go ahead and pull up the video actually, because we did talk about what will this team look like if they are in the 60s in total defense. How do you sort of assess where Florida State is overall, considering the defense has sort of stepped up to where, more than maybe a practical sort of expectation coming off just how bad last year was?
Yeah, they've been better than I thought they could be. I just thought this would have been like what we've seen these last few weeks would have been like the absolute ceiling of what I thought they could be. I know what Aslan just said. They're 67th. I didn't even think they could get to here. Number one, I had no idea before the season that 11 was going to be this good, but he has been. Jamie Robinson, by the way, doesn't get talked about enough. He leads them in tackles. He leads them in interceptions. He's a very good football player. He's helped a lot. Keir Thomas, too.
Are you just saying that because he tweeted about it and we retweeted him?
No.
All right, yeah, he did.
He tweeted about what?
I think it was like a song lyric or something just about, they'll scream your errors, but they'll whisper your compliments or something about just basically when you're doing bad, everybody will point it out, but when you're doing good, nobody says anything.
Don't be a fan later.
Yeah,
right.
I
hear you, Jamie. Yeah. I hear you, Jamie. Yeah. Hey, buddy, I've been screaming it from the mountaintops. You can play. Believe it. But, yeah, so and it's weird because you look at these games and you're like, man, I thought they played pretty darn well against NC State. I thought they played pretty darn well against Miami. I thought they played well against Clemson in the second half. I thought they played really well against Louisville in the second half. Syracuse for most of the game. Like, they've been there haven't been any just outright embarrassments. Even Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's like I know they ended up giving up 38 points, and that's probably I don't think Notre Dame might have scored that much since. But you were there. They weren't just wide open busts. I think
other than the first touchdown.
Well, yeah. I mean, come on. You had to get that out of the way.
Well, yeah.
And then even Wake Forest. Like, has Wake Forest scored less than 31 on anyone? Like that's Wake Forest is putting 40 on everyone, or 50, or 60, or 70 against Army. Like, and you held them to 31. You held them with 1 touchdown in the second half.
They're the number 2 scoring offense in the country. They average over 44.7 points per game.
It's insanity. So you think about the offenses they've had to face, other than
and yes, that is the
Clemson.
lowest output they've had all year is 35.
Oh, is that what it was? They scored 35? I don't
Yeah.
know why I thought 31. Yeah. So they had 28 at the half, and then, Florida State. Fuller made that Fuller adjustment. What are you going to do, Sam? Sorry, buddy. I don't think they scored their last 4 drives of the game. It just didn't help that you kept turning it over and giving it to them. But anyway, when you look at how they played a tough schedule, like they had to play North Carolina at North Carolina, where they always score a lot of points, Miami with Van Kozar out of the blue. Now they got to play the Boston College kid with their quarterback. NC State is a good offense, and you were flu-ridden. Like all these things that have happened, and you look at the overall the context of the season, and you contextualize it, you're like, yeah, they haven't been bad. They've made enough progress from last year to this year that you're like, okay, if that's a real trend and not just a Jermaine Johnson effect, then they have a chance to actually be good next year. Not elite, not Georgia level, but good, like top 40. Right? Don't you? You return a good bit of guys. It's just that front 4 you worry about. I get it. That's your strength.
That's a big deal, though.
That's your
really
strength. You hope that maybe a couple guys come back that can come back, and you're gonna have to hit a couple more home runs in the transfer portal. But yeah, I think you've instilled something on that side of the ball. They do communicate better. They do, as Adam Fuller said. I think it was Fuller. Maybe it was Norvell actually was talking about the accountability they have within that room to communicate better because it matters to them. And they were tired of giving up busts. So yeah, man, I've been pleasantly surprised with the defense. The offense, weirdly, I assume the offense is ranked higher nationally in whatever they're doing. I don't know, maybe not. They're probably around the same, right? Do we know what they are in total offense?
Florida State, 81st, man. Yeah.
Yeah, so the defense is actually better than the offense right now. The defense does have Jermaine Johnson and Keir Thomas and Jamie Robinson. The offense didn't get quite that level of transfers to use. But, yeah, man, I think the defense has outperformed the offense. I think they're both obviously getting better. And you just have to hope and expect, not hope, expect. Because you are returning a lot of guys next year, even losing the dudes up front on defense. You're returning most of your team. You saw the seniors that walked. Who are you going to miss? No offense, guys. Other than 11 and 4, and Devontae Love-Taylor, who is a big loss, there aren't many guys there that you're like, man, that's a huge loss to this football team. Most of the guys that have kind of rallied here in the second half of this season and gotten much better than last year, they're all coming back again. I know that wasn't your question, but I do feel pretty good about the defense. Whether they go to a bowl or not, they have gotten substantially better, and you have to expect that continues to improve the more comfortable they get with the system, the scheme, the same guys keep playing, especially on the back end, and the competition in practice gets better. That's something that we don't talk about nearly enough. But when you load a roster with talent, like let's say that who's the kid, the wide receiver that people think is coming here? Coleman?
Yes, Kevin Coleman. Yes,
Kevin Coleman. So let's say he comes in and he's on your team. Now maybe he doesn't start right away because he's behind some other guys. I think he will, but whatever. Let's say he's second string. Man, just think about what your starters and all your corners are going against though now. How much better that room on that side of the ball has gotten where you're competing against that every day in practice. And how much better like a Malik McClain or a Keyshawn has to be to hold that guy off. Like that's when greatness comes, man. Those Florida State teams in the 13 and 14, they practiced against great players. And they practiced against great depth. Like Nick Wasom couldn't get on the field in 13. And he was a borderline all-ACC corner the year before. So that's where I think that's something we don't talk about enough. But the practice reps and the competition in practice, that only improves when you get more depth, and that only improves your football team.
Also, I think it really is important for them to make it to a bowl game to really keep getting those practices. And listen, if they don't, we'll probably be here spinning that. It's not that big of a deal. Like, do you really want to go all the way out to El Paso and maybe get hurt? But no, man, like they this team with everybody they're going to have to count on, like Quayshawn, Fuller, Malcolm Ram, and you shut down Kier and Jermaine probably for a large part of bowl prep if they even decide to go.
Oh, I
wouldn't.
Can't imagine Jermaine Johnson's playing in a bowl game.
So I think it's really crucial for them to get these next.
Right, but
games.
I guess I wouldn't. I don't disagree with that at all. Those 15 practices would be big. Well, I guess my point is though that I wouldn't feel any less about the direction of the program, and that they are getting better. Whether they win these next two or not.
I don't. Come on, why? Like, so they lose to Boston College and lose to Florida. You're like, we're still okay.
I mean,
I'm not saying that everything is horrible.
What do you think? What are you saying? Did they suck?
That's disheartening. I mean, it's extremely disheartening. I'm not saying that like I don't. They are moving in a good direction. This team is better than last year. But
I guess that's the lens. That's the lens I look through it though. Like they are better. Once you go 0-4 with the loss to Jacksonville State, the season to me has already been like anything you wanted to accomplish, bowl-wise, win-wise, that's a wrap. You blew it in September. But they've actually rallied to the point where now we're talking about a bowl game, which would have – I mean, I couldn't even thought this conversation would be possible. But as long as we keep seeing the product we've been seeing these last – why would we see anything different? This is what they are. They play close games. They're going to win some. They're going to lose some. But overall, like you just said, the program is in a better place. So it seems almost kind of I know wins matter. I'm not here to say that, but it seems kind of I can't even think of the word.
Contradict.
But
I don't think it's contradict.
No, like and not even reactionary. Just like as long as the program's getting better, then that's the key, right? That's the main focus. Frustrating, disheartening, that could be something too. But the program is in a better spot, whether they lose to Boston College 30-27 or beat Boston College 30-27. Like you still know the program's in a better spot. You also know this season is what it is. Like it's not a magical season. You just had a magical night, a magical comeback win. That was cool. But it's not a magical season. That narrative, that script had already been written back in September. So they've made the most of these last 2 months, in my opinion. And really it becomes about, to me, continuing to show that these last 6 games weren't a fluke, which I don't think they were, but then wrapping up this recruiting class. That's all this next month is. Because you go to a bowl, that'd be cool to get those extra 15 practices for Jordan Travis. But 5-7, 4-8, 6-6 at Florida State, none of it's great. But at least you feel better about where you are, no matter how these last 2 games end up, in my opinion.
Yeah, but there's a spectrum of terrible. I mean, there's a difference between 4-8 and 6-6.
But I don't think you wouldn't say if they lose to Boston College and Florida, which they'll be underdogs in both games. You wouldn't say they're terrible. That's all.
I mean, said 2 weeks ago on this show, if they don't make it to a bowl game, something will have gone wrong. I believe that still. I mean, if they don't win out, something there's going to be some sort of regression.
You also said that before they lost to NC State with the flu and without their quarterback. That has to matter some, right? We just got done talking about Boston College being a completely different team with their starting quarterback. Like, it does matter. But my point being, you said that after, I think, the Clemson game.
I think it's after the UMass game, maybe. I don't think I said it before. Maybe I said after the Clemson game? I just remember somebody asking us, like, what is a successful season in your estimation? Or, like, how what do you want to see to end the season? I'm like, make it to a bowl game. Because if you don't make it to a bowl game, something will have gone wrong in terms of, like, your trajectory. Now, again, maybe the trajectory of this season doesn't carry over to next year. I mean, I can maybe buy into that. Like, I've never thought winning a bowl game was a big deal. That's always right. Like, you win a bowl game, Texas beats Georgia or whatever in a bowl game, and Sam Ellinger saying Texas is back, and they're not back. So I think there's an overinflated importance on winning your bowl game. But I mean, these are 2 important games. These are road games against a team that plays really physical. You're coming off an emotional win. Let's see how you react and prepare for that game. And then, you're playing Florida. You're playing it. I mean, none of you really have much to play for other than pride. That's kind of important, though. And you're playing in that arena, in that stadium, against a coach that's, I don't know, kind of clinging on to his job. It would not look good if you go in there and you lose by 2 scores. I don't know how that would affect. I don't know if that would have a lingering effect going into Duquesne or going to LSU week 2. But it would make for a pretty crummy 5-6 months for me, though. I mean, I'm trying to talk and prop this team up. Man, it would be a lot easier to sell 9 wins coming off a 6-6 year as opposed to 4-8, where you've lost 2 in a row, and then what would that be, like 4 of your last 6?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can call that reactionary, but it's
no, not reactionary is not the word.
I'm not offended by it, but I mean,
no, but I'm not trying. I wouldn't care if you're offended. That's not the word. I'm not explaining what I mean. It's more like just did they play any worse against Clemson than they did against Miami? Like they're in a position to win these games.
They played better though. I think we.
Well, that's what I do.
Better,
I think they played a little bit better on offense, but they were facing Miami and not Clemson. I just think that what we're looking at is an improving team, and I don't think this Boston College game and this Florida game matters at all when it comes to Duquesne. To answer your question, I think we expect Florida State next year, whether they go 6-6 or 4-8, next year I'm expecting 7 to 8 wins. No matter what happens these next 2 weeks, I believe in enough
8 to 9. I think you push 8 to 9 if they go. 6
Oh,
to
no
6.
way, man! I'm not pushing 9 wins until they win 9. If they're 8-2, that's when I'll push the 9th win. I'm not going the 9-win route.
Why not? I mean, you got Wake. Wake's gonna. I think they lose Hartman, but Wake's got to come. Here.
Probably not. As far as I know, he's a redshirt freshman.
I mean, you got
the
Duquesne.
NC State kid's a sophomore.
I mean, you got Duquesne. You have Florida at home. You're going to have Clemson at home, unless that Quinn Ewers kid is like really the next thing. Maybe it's still DJ Uiagalelei, and he hasn't really looked all that great. I just think we'll fall naturally at some point in the 8 months of off season of looking at that schedule and looking back at this season like, well, they really weren't that far away. This game they didn't have Jordan Travis. This game they had Mackenzie Milton. This game they didn't have half the team available. This time they will. And then you start looking at it. I mean, you've been watching enough of this football this season. This is not a very strong football conference. Or maybe there's not that elite Clemson jewel of the conference. Everybody's kind of there's not like a top tier. There's just a second tier, and then everybody else just kind of floating around behind them, and then maybe Duke behind everybody else.
I was going to say, but other than like Duke, who Florida State doesn't play anyway, there's nobody horrid. Syracuse maybe, but then Syracuse almost beat Clemson. Syracuse did beat Boston College. Like there's nobody. Probably Syracuse now is probably the worst team other than Duke, but everybody else is kind of in the same, swimming in the same lake. All kind of just average. A little bit like Virginia's pretty good. They have a good quarterback, but then he's gone. He's gone. So or he was this past week anyway. So it's just no. I mean, I think next year my expectations will be similar to what they were this year. But I also think, well, look, man, and so much depends on December. Like, who's coming in? It's hard to even talk about next year because what if they have, I can't even think of JT Daniels is your quarterback. I love Jordan Travis, but I'm saying what if you get an impact player like that at a position of need? Some defensive end or some safety.
Just say Jordan Travis, but Jordan Travis continues to look the way he did against, I guess, like Miami. Yeah, because I don't even think you would think JT Daniels is an impact upgrade.
No, and that was just a big name that I was thinking of.
Right,
but there will be big names leaving big name programs, and you might get a couple of them. And that changes the complexion of your team, as we've seen this year. It changed the whole complexion of a defense. It went from god-awful to just mediocre, which is a big jump. So yeah, I guess I've seen enough from this coaching staff to have confidence that next year will be better than this year, because this year is so much better than last year. Taking away the results, because unlike you, Aslan, I'm not results oriented.
Yeah,
I'm process oriented. You know how I learned that from? John James Fisher, your idol. I wish you would heed his advice sometimes and just be more process-oriented than results-oriented, because if you're just looking at the team itself and the strides that have been made, no matter what happens, you can't argue that strides have been made and they're not a better team. What's to think that next year they don't make similar strides?
Because they're going to lose Jermaine Johnson. They're going to lose Keir Thomas, and they're being carried by the defense right now, oddly enough. And you're an offensive-minded coach, and your offense still – and again, I mean, they score 30 points a game. It's crazy to sit here and
what they do.
Criticize
it
them.
is crazy what they do.
But yeah, they have – the way they sputter sometimes in the game, it's bizarre. It's like, how does this team – it's almost like you shouldn't even worry. It's like it's going to be fine. They're going to still find some way with 13.
Yeah, they're going to have – other than the North Carolina game, they've had stretches in every game where it looks bad. But, they're going to get –
It did look bad in the North Carolina game too, right? First quarter, they were down 10-0.
Well, but they'd only had one drive. I think they scored on like 5 of 6 drives or something like that. It was just a weird game. They had the one drive.
Did they play 4 good quarters against Miami? Remember we asked that going to the game?
No, they got outscored 28-3 during one stretch. The third quarter was abysmal. No, they're not going to play 4 good quarters together. But I think when you look at this coaching staff and you try to project, and it's a projection at this point because none of these faxes have been sent in, or do they still do? I know I asked this.
Yeah,
do they still fax them in?
They do.
They don't just like take a picture on their phone. Mm-mm. I feel like that should be the next step in what we're doing here. I guess you could fake that though easier. But until those faxes get in, it hasn't happened yet. But as we're projecting, I've seen enough from this coaching staff, really on both sides of the ball, quite honestly, but really on the offense, even though, as you said, they're 81st or 87th in total offense, that imagining them with better players. Much better players, which is what the goal is, and then you see how they're putting up 30 points with not great talent, especially out wide. Now imagine if they do have great talent out wide, and maybe that quarterback keeps getting better and better, and maybe even get an elite running back, like an All-American type running back. I like these guys, but I'm saying maybe you get somebody even better, a Dalvin-ish.
You're getting greedy.
Oh, absolutely, I am. I mean, you're in the state of Florida. You've got weirdo in Gainesville that nobody can have a conversation with and is just a weird dude, and you've got all that stuff going on in Coral Gables. You have a chance to rack up in these next 2 years if you can continue to show stability. And then you're loading your roster for a coaching staff that I right now believe in. And that's what I'm projecting is like, okay, they've turned chicken blank into not even chicken salad, the mix of the two. But I do think it's coming. I think what I've seen has been good enough from this coaching staff to project, okay, next year they're going to be even better than this year, and then what's it going to look like in 2023? Is that a 10-win season? If Jordan Travis is still your quarterback and he's a senior, 25-year-old senior, and you've got Kevin Coleman on one side and Travis Hunter on the other, and you still have Trayshawn Ward as a running back and some other super-duper All-American, your offensive linemen are better all around. You have a tight end that can go make plays, like really go make plays. You start to get like pumped up, like man, if you give these guys the horses, from what we've seen, they're scoring 30 points a game on some teams with not a lot of talent, maybe not any NFL talent. Now give them some NFL talent and see what they can do. That's why I get a little excited, and I try not to put too much in to these next 2 weeks because I don't think they will matter at all in 2023 when we're going to be in Pasadena together.
I mean, it is weird. It's wild to look at the schedule this year and see the scores of these games, and then you think about, again, to your point, if they add a player here, if they add a player there, like they're not far away from being 8-2. But like,
I mean, they're also
life never works that way, though, right?
Yeah, they're also not far away from being 2-8. That's what happens when you play a lot of close games. I think their record is fair, other than the stupid game in September that I'm not going to even mention. They should be 5-5. I think they're a 5-5 team. They play a lot of close games. They do some bad things on both sides of the ball. Special teams has not been good at all, and so it's not like they're unlucky to have their record. I think they've deserved a 5-5 type record. That's what they are. They're a middling 6-6 team, but compared to what they were last year, 5-7, whatever they end up as, compared to what they were last year, that is a pretty substantial leap, in my opinion, because I think they were just so bad last year.
That's true. They were terrible. So he went 8-5 year 1 in Memphis, then he went 10-3 year 2, 8-6 year 3, then 12-1.
So don't you think, like, I remember when Jimbo took over, I think everybody pointed to 12, right? Like that was the year where they thought it was going to be something special. I mean, I know they started 2011 ranked
Clemson.
5th.
Yeah, once you beat Clemson in 12.
No, but I mean, even like when he took the job, like when do you think he'll have it turned around where they're good again? Because we knew he was going to recruit it. You could tell right away. I mean, he got Joyner and Jeff Luke within a couple of weeks. You're like, okay, if he's going to load up this roster, by 2012 is when Florida State should be maybe not back, but close.
I thought they'd be back like ASAP. Like that Oklahoma game was a killer, and 10 was like, good gosh, we're not even close.
Yeah, well, that was just
bounced back in 11. It was like, oh, yeah, we are, we're there, we're here, we're back.
Well, and then they lost to EJ got hurt. They lost to Clemson. They lost to Wake. and then their offensive line got banged up. But
to your point real quick, that's why this whole 2023 thing is such like a foreign thing to me. I've never been like, all right, but then we've only had 2 coaches really. I don't know with Willie, I just think that Willie, I thought it was a 1-year blip. We're back on track. Everything will be fine. It's a little bit of a different thing for me to have to look at something and be like, all right, we're going to have to really project this out 3 years down the road.
Yeah, but it's
not that it's wrong,
the reality.
but just it's...
Yeah, well, no, I get it. But you grew up a Florida State fan like I did. It sucks. You don't want to. It's like being a Falcon fan. Like, I guess this Matt Ryan kid looks pretty good as a rookie. Maybe in 3 years they'll be decent. Maybe he'll get to a point where he can blow a 28-3 lead in a flipping Super Bowl. Still not over that. By the way, Matt Ryan leads the world. I've said this forever, and I need to go look it up. With the Falcons trying to protect the lead, I bet there's been no quarterback in history that has been sacked more when his team has a lead in the fourth quarter than Matt Ryan. It is like he gets paid by the fourth quarter sack. That didn't come into play this past week because they got beat by 100 points by Dallas. But I was thinking about that against the Saints the other week. They had a 24-6 lead, I think. The Saints go score. What does Matt Ryan do? I'll get sacked again. I'll get sacked again. No chance. Let's punt. Now I'll get sacked some more. No, he did end up leading them down for the game-winning field goal. But still, it's very frustrating.
You know what I don't get? After the game, like the game ball goes to Dan Quinn, and everybody's talking on television about, this obviously was a huge moment for Dan Quinn, former Atlanta.
Screw Dan Quinn.
Like, what did they do him wrong?
No, he was terrible.
He went, he got to the Super Bowl, then they go 10-6, 7-9, 7-9, 0-5.
Yeah. He got a
shot. He didn't get done dirty.
They stuck with him. They stuck with him after a 7-9 season, and he had 2 straight 7-9 seasons that both should have been 6 and 10s. He kicked game-winning field goals on the last play of the game of meaningless games against the Bucs, so they cost them draft spots each time, which still infuriates me. But the point being, like when you look at a team, this team in particular, I don't think it's fair to just say, okay, what are they going to be in 2022? Because he's not just building for 2022. I think the judgment day, the judgment season, is 2023. That's his 4th year. It's his 3rd year. And I'm not saying you can't be upset in 2022 if they go 6-6 or 5-7 again. He better not go 5-7. That could be a rough look. But it's not like you just can't judge you can't judge the games themselves for what they are, and you can't question 4th down decisions because by God, that's our life for the next few years with this guy. Weird, kind of unexplainable 4th down decisions both ways. But I just think that's the year you're looking for because of what he's doing in the recruiting, what he's doing on the recruiting trail right now, and what he could possibly do in the portal and how they're developing this team. 2023, if I'm still sitting here saying, look, guys, they're playing them close. They're keeping them close. I know they lost. But, it just came down to a few plays. If that's still happening in 2023, there is a big problem. And it could be a very big problem for Mike Norvell. But I don't see that happening. I just think this is how programs usually are built. From terrible, again, we can't stress enough how bad that team was last year. It really was a winless team, except for 13, except for Jordan Travis. That is a winless team. And Duke did you a favor by coming down. That is a 2-10, 1-11 type team in a normal year. You are so much better than that team.
I don't know, though, Corey. I mean, do teams really have that steady upward trajectory and then like year 4 or 5 it pays off? It just feels like so many of the last 20 seasons, it's really – I mean, other than like LSU's like the only thing I can think of from instantly where – I mean, that was like year 3 of Orgeron, I think. Everything else is like, man, year 2, it's – It's like you – and again, this isn't Fire Norvell. This is – the 2023 thing, I get it. Like, yeah, this is a better team than last year. You don't fire a guy after he's improved. I think it'll be almost like the exception to the rule. It sounds so pragmatic. It sounds realistic. It sounds like that's the way it should be. You go 3 wins, then you go 5, then you go 7, then you jump to 10 somehow. Like that sounds reasonable. I can't think of that really happening a lot. Maybe like at Iowa State, but nowhere that's ended up like winning a national title. Like no one's like won the title year 5, it feels like.
Yeah, I mean, Jimbo went what did he go? 10, 9, 12, 14.
Oh, it's 8, right? I think they went 8 and 11. Oh, yeah, 11 was rough, man. Although wins and losses. I think they went 8 and 5 that year.
Yeah, but again, when you looked at that,
whatever.
I think it was 9. It could have been 8. You're right. When you look at that, and it helped a lot when EJ got back. When you look at that season, though, it's like you could still see the pieces in place. Like, man, this is a It's a pretty relatively young team. They did not have a Jermaine Johnson that was leaving. It's a relatively young team, and look at what he's doing.
It was 9-4. I'm sorry, you're right.
What was he doing on the recruiting trail? That's what gave you hope. He is going to load this roster with so much talent. You can't help but win in this conference. And he's a good coach. And they also got an incredible quarterback, which really helped. But I don't know that Jimbo is maybe the right comparison, but also even Jimbo didn't take over a program in worse shape than what Norvell got this program in. That 2009 team would have beaten the 2020 team by 4 touchdowns. Like it was in awful shape what Norvell took over, especially when Marvin Wilson doesn't play hardly at all and isn't Marvin Wilson, and then Corey Dern gives you nothing. Those are the 2 guys you're counting on. Your 2 defensive ends give you 3 sacks total. Meanwhile, Jermaine Johnson just got that in 1 game to give you an idea. So I just think that it's hard to grasp what kind of hole he's digging out of, because you do look around the country and you see like, well, man, it took Jimbo 2 years, it took Kirby 2 years, or it took Jimbo 3 years to get to 12 wins. It took Kirby probably 2 years maybe to get to really good.
It took Stoops 2 years at Oklahoma, took Kirby 2 years at Oklahoma, or at Georgia, took Saban 2 years in Alabama, took Urban Meyer 2 years at Florida, Ohio State as well.
Yeah, but again, Ohio, those are maybe Oklahoma is the best comparison of those, because Oklahoma was down in the dumps, I think. That was at the Heat. Stoops came in after John Blake, and they were awful. But all those other teams you mentioned, they weren't awful. They weren't embarrassments. They weren't one of the worst teams in the country. And they certainly had more talent than what Norvell got in place. So we have a whole offseason to do this. The point being, I know it started with me talking about these two games don't matter. They do matter. I mean, results matter. We're at that point now. You want to win the game. But as far as my perception of where the program is, unless you go out and win one of these games by 50 points or lose one of these games by 50 points, I don't know that I'll really change my opinion of what they've accomplished this year and where they're going. Okay. I still think they're steadily improving. I think next year I expect 7 wins. And then 2023, we'll see where the chips are and what you got and what you look like. You might have a Heisman candidate and a guy that plays both ways and is awesome at both. Who knows? We have no idea of what it's going to look like in 2023, but I do like the bones of this program more than I have in a good while.
And just real quick as we go, because we're about hitting an hour on a Tuesday show, which we really don't have a lot to talk about.
That's what we do, man. We're bringing it.
But in terms of year-over-year improvement, if they are 6-6, though, like a good 2022 is sort of it'll be redefined, wouldn't it? I mean, because if you end 4-8,
oh yeah, well maybe you're right.
So
like that's what I said. Like
I'm not trying to be
difficult
himself. With you, just
it does. But again, results oriented people like you for sure. Again, I'm all about the process. I wish the scoreboard wasn't even on.
You're right.
I just want to watch guys play. I just want to play. Let's like
compete.
a scrimmage.
Go out there and compete,
just
man.
Compete.
Parking lot.
Don't even look at the scoreboard because it's not going to even be on. Yeah, no, it's funny though because we've joked about the Duke game kind of screwed them a little bit because that again it just made that team. Oh, they're 3-6. Well, that was a Duke team that had 40 players on the roster. They didn't want to. I'm not sure why they did that. They did not want to be there. It was clear. And then you beat Jacksonville State and you had that crazy win against North Carolina. Those were your wins. You were really a 2-10, 1-11 football team, legitimately. If you'd have played a real schedule, because you didn't even have to play Clemson and Florida, so you would have been unbelievably, mercifully hammered by both of those teams. So, yeah, kind of like if they go 6-6, if you're you're going to be like, well, if he goes 7-5, that's not a big enough improvement over 6-6. What are we doing here? So maybe for his own benefit, go ahead and throw these last 2 games. Roll into 2022 4-8. Then you go 7-5, maybe 8-4. And you're like, look, guys. Look what I'm doing here. I'm working miracles. I took a 4-8 team and made them an 8-win team in one season. That means next year we're going 12-0. Yeah. That's how you sell it. You're right. Because yes, that's a good point. If they go 6-6 or 7-6, then yeah, it changes the expectations. It turns the dial up a little on the expectations to where you don't want to just be stagnant. Not just another pesky 7-win team. You've got to turn the dial up and get to 9 wins. But the other point of that is, say they did somehow win out. I shouldn't say somehow. It's not like they're playing incredible football
that's
teams.
fair.
Here.
Yeah, if they somehow went out,
if they won these next 2 games and then won their bowl game, well, they go into next year on a 4-game winning streak. And all of a sudden, not only do you have a team that should get more talent in it, and it's going to be older, more experienced, you hope better, but it also believes in itself and knows it can win. You know what I mean? Like it knows it can win games.
Yeah,
so
big games,
that's
big
good
games.
too.
Miami on the road against a good Boston College team, on the road against Florida. Yeah, big games, big games.
So, and I think that stuff matters, man. Not as much as talent, but belief and confidence matter a great deal. Maybe as much as talent. I don't know. If you don't have any confidence, it doesn't matter how talented you are. And so that would instill some confidence in this program that it could desperately need. So when you think about like I'm not going back on what I just said for the last 15 minutes.
Ooh, almost had you.
I do think these wins could be very important for the self. If they got wins, one or both of these wins would be really important for just the mindset of the team.
Okay.
I do think that's fair. I would not think less of them. I would not think like, oh God, now they're going to win 10 games next year. But I do think, man, that would give them a lot of confidence. That would give those guys a lot of confidence and the coaching staff a lot of confidence going into the offseason.
That was for you, Shanna. Enjoy that victory. I just wrestled with Corey for 35 minutes to get, okay, maybe, but not really.
Not really, but I'll let Aslan feel like he got a dub. Hey, by the way, we were talking about confidence before we go. I thought it was interesting. And guys, I say this every week. Just go watch Dillingham. Go watch all of them. And also go listen to, you're going to have to do it on the podcast, but Tom Lang brought out the montage for the Jeff Cameron show, which he hasn't done this year because why would he have? But it's a tradition for big games at Florida State for Tom Lang to put together a cool like montage with a song and highlight clips to start the Jeff Cameron show. You can't do it on YouTube because it's copyright, the song, which was November Rain. Great jam. Is that your favorite GNR song, Aslan?
Estranged, probably. But it's up there, though.
I think Tom and Jeff actually went back and forth about which of those songs to use.
Really?
Estranged or November Rain.
Nice.
I think Tom's argument was like, well, more people know November Rain. Yeah. The lyrics work a little better, especially the yunta-dunt, that part there at the end. That's the musical part.
When Axel's at the funeral with his wife being buried or whatever.
Yeah, and then the violins start coming in a little bit, and I think somebody dives into a cake. It's a weird video, folks.
It's such a weird video.
It's a bizarre video. But go listen to that on the podcast because you can listen to it. You just can't watch on YouTube because it's copywritten. But also going back to Kenny Dillingham, go watch him. You can watch all of that. We don't have GNR playing for Kenny Dillingham's press conference, and he talked about Jordan Travis and he's not just a runner. He goes, I hear that all the time. He can actually play quarterback. And he goes into how even on the throw to Parchment, that was his 4th read, which I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
because how quickly? He goes that quickly through his reads. Yeah. But he did. Maybe it's you look at something first to see if it's open. But probably his 3rd read at least of where he wanted to go with the ball, where he thought he might go with the ball. But he talked about how he's checking them into all the right plays now, and that he knows the sport. I thought that was the most interesting thing Dillingham said, other than glaring at me when I asked him about getting emotional, was asking Jordan Travis, isn't it fun when you know the sport now? It's not just you're talented and you're good. He's an intelligent guy that understands the sport now, and when a blitzer might be coming and what to do on a hot read, and seeing the picture, as Fuller says all the time, seeing the picture and understanding the picture, and how much more that's developed. Because Jordan Travis isn't just a football player now. He knows the sport. He loves the sport. He understands what he's looking at, which has made him much better in the passing game. I thought all that was really interesting.
Yeah. What'll be interesting, I'm sure, is the discourse on Seminole Headlines, which comes up 1 to 3 p.m. live on Warchant TV. That's our YouTube channel, which you should be subscribed to, and you should be hitting the thumbs up if you're listening to this on YouTube. They'll be back at practice in the morning. We'll have updates following practice, as well as interviews with Coach Norvell and selected players. And then we will have a live show for you folks on Wednesday, 6 o'clock, TBD. Who knows? But we'll have a live show for you folks.
Should be 6. I don't think Brady's got anything. I think we could do it at 6.
Sounds good then. Don't forget, again, headlines 1 to 3 and practice updates going on before that. So check it out. Stay connected. He's Corey Maslon. Thank you for listening to Wake Up Warchant, fueled by DeLuna Coffee.